Duncan died, 2/3 of which were self-inflicted. National Public Radio correspondent Michaeline Duclef made a rough calculation and determined that the risk of contracting Ebola in the United States was 1 in 13.3 million, far less than the risk of dying in a plane crash, from a bee sting, by being struck by lightning, or being attacked by a shark. The chance of being killed in a car crash is about 1,500 times greater than the risk of getting infected with the Ebola virus in the United States. It probably comes as no surprise that there were very few front-page headlines about bee stings or shark attacks on October 8, 2014, let alone about car crashes and gun violence. Perhaps this seems natural. After all, Ebola virus infection, the cause of Ebola hemorrhagic fever, is unusual in the United States, whereas heart attacks, cancer, car crashes, suicide, and murder happen on a regular basis. The problem, however, with the media emphasizing and ordinary people fearing Ebola over other far more prevalent health threats is that it shapes our behavior, sometimes in dangerous ways. How many people smoked a cigarette or consumed a sugary breakfast cereal while reading about the threat they faced in catching Ebola? Some Americans jumped on the blame game bandwagon, attacking the CDC, insisting that politicians and hospitals had dropped the ball, and accusing African countries of ignorant, superstitious behavior. In Washington, D.C., 1/4 of the members of Trinity Episcopal Church stopped attending services because they feared that some fellow parishioners might have traveled to West Africa. An Ohio bridal shop owner reported losing tens of thousands of dollars because Amber Vinson, one of 2 Dallas-based nurses who tested positive for Ebola, had visited her shop. The owner closed the store during the incubation period and had the store professionally cleaned, but a string of frightened customers canceled their orders. According to a Presidential Commission report, Americans focused on their almost non-existent risk of catching Ebola from travelers instead of pressing to help the truly affected nations. It is quite likely that most of these frightened Americans did not increase their exercise, cut down on eating processed foods, fasten their seatbelts, quit smoking, make sure guns in the home were unloaded in locked cases, or get help for depression and alcoholism. The novelty of Ebola was exciting, like watching a horror movie. Those other causes of death are familiar and boring. In other words, Americans acted in an irrational way, overestimating the risk of Ebola and underestimating the risk of the life-threatening phenomena about which they might be able to do something. As Sara pointed out in an article she wrote that month, what is the most effective treatment for Americans to protect themselves from early death by an infectious pathogen? A flu shot. Fast forward to the spring and summer of 2020 in America. A new pathogen had taken the nation by storm. SARS-CoV-2, the virus that causes COVID-19, was spreading across the country with few signs of slowing anytime soon. By August, the illness had already sickened almost 6 million people and killed more than 180,000 in the United States. And yet, unlike the unnecessary fear that arose from the 2014 Ebola epidemic, in the case of the novel coronavirus, all across the country, people were insisting that the crisis was not real, that it was either exaggerated or, worse, fabricated as part of an elaborate conspiracy. Chief among those who believed that COVID-19 was an exaggerated, perhaps even fake, threat was none other than the President of the United States himself, Donald Trump. At one point, Trump accused Democrats of politicizing the virus, even calling it their new hoax. All the while, important guidelines around social distancing and mask wearing were not being followed by large parts of the population. States such as Florida that should